Welcome back to the Discover podcast, where we view faith as a discovery journey with Jesus to help you become the person God created you to be. Hey there, welcome back to the Discover podcast. So glad that you're with us today. You know, one of the things that I regularly hear from people is the question, how do I hear from the Lord? In our conversation today, we're going to sit down with the latest member of our staff team, Jake Mlsna, who is our new director of discipleship. And as you listen to his story, you're going to hear him share a lot about how he has learned to hear from the Lord and follow the Lord in his daily life and big decisions and in little moments. And so if you're in a place where you're like, how can I grow in that ability? I think this conversation will really be engaging for you. Hey there, Meadowbrook. Welcome back to the Discover podcast. Today, we are sitting down with our newest staff member, Jake Mlsna, who's actually not really a staff member yet. We're recording this on April, I think, what's today? 23rd. And you will start officially May 1st. So we're a week out from your official start date, but you might as well have been on staff already for the last month. Anyway, glad to have you here. Why don't you start just by, for those of you who don't know Jake, go ahead and introduce yourself and just give a little snippet of who you are, your background, your spiritual journey, and kind of how you came to know the Lord.
Yeah, so I think I am a Wisconsin-born kid, grew up in small town Wisconsin to a family that was great. Love my family. They were just down here for Easter. Mm-hmm. And I would say even grew up as like a spiritually interested kid. We went to church on Sunday. We didn't talk about it a ton outside of that. But I always had this nagging interest in spirituality. But I didn't know where to get any of the answers. And over time, my life just kind of started to revolve around sports. So that's another thing about me. Like, I love sports, played them since I was little. I'm a fan of all things Wisconsin sports for the most part. But my big sport was wrestling. Like, I was super involved in the sport. It kind of was who I was. Mm-hmm.
Could you still do that now? Like, could you still get on a wrestling mat today and throw down with some people?
I probably could.
Yeah.
I mean, not if they're good, then they would hurt me. But if they're not very good. So, I mean, like in college when I was an RA, I would kind of challenge the biggest guy on the floor to a wrestling match, just because I could beat them if they didn't wrestle. And then my residents would be like, whoa, look at that guy.
Right, and still fearing people. We should do that with the youth group. That'd be fun to have a wrestling challenge with the youth group, right, Monty?
Just make sure none of them wrestle.
Yeah.
Because I think Hillary would be worried I hurt myself. Hillary's my wife. I have a wife and two kids, 12-year-old Elijah, 10-year-old Kate. But so I went off to college even thinking I was going to wrestle. That was kind of like part of who I was. Part of the story was that when I was in high school, I wanted to win state. But my senior year, I had a kid who was a 4-time state champion in my bracket, and then one other kid who was good, and I ended up getting 5th at state that year, and I was like super disappointed. So I'm like, I'm going to prove myself in college. I'm going to wrestle there and like become a national qualifier at D3 level, not D1. But I get to college, and I don't know anyone, and I like tried to do the wrestling thing, didn't feel like I connected with the team, and I ended up finding the party scene pretty quickly in my time in college. Mm-hmm. And like the first weekend I didn't go to a party, second weekend I went to a party and didn't drink, then realized that would be terrible. So then went to parties and ended up just in that lifestyle. And I could have still wrestled and done that. A lot of guys in the team did, but I knew if I was going to be in a sport, I'd want to be all in. So I just quit wrestling, which left this vacant, like this huge void in my life of who I really was. So I dove headfirst into partying. And that's just what my freshman year of college was. But the weird thing, I said I was spiritually interested. I would still go to church on Sunday.
Oh, interesting.
I would party Friday, Saturday, go to church Sunday morning, and then recycle that.
Yeah. I cannot picture a partying Jake Mlsna. Knowing you for the however many years I've known you, like to see you in the party scene just like is a huge disconnect for me.
I don't think I fit very well. But
you were the dorky party guy?
I was something. I was like, I don't know what it really was, but I just didn't know who I was. Yeah. And this was who I could, who I could feel some sort of like connection to. Mm-hmm. But it was not going well. Mm-hmm. Like I got written up multiple times for different incidents in the dorms. But during that time, I had one friend, her name was Julie, who was in one of my honors classes, and she would like constantly invite me to this Christian group she was in. Mm. She was like super kind, and I was like, no. Like it said no every single time she asked me, except at the end of my freshman year, this is when it all spiraled out of control. My best friend started to date the girl that I liked behind my back. And like I said, been written up multiple times. And I'm just like, I don't know what is going on right now. So I go to a house party, and as I'm there, the guy and the girl show up.
The girl you like.
The girl I like and the guy who I'd finally just found out were dating. And I'm like, I'm out. So I just leave the party. And I put my hands in my pocket and I pull out a flyer that this Julie had given me for this concert that the campus ministry was putting on. And it is, I don't say this flippantly, it was an act of God that that concert happened to be on my walk home, because I would not have been able to find it. I had been partying for a long time. And I get to the party or to the concert. I'm like, yeah, I'll show up. And as I get there, I start to think, I don't think Julie drinks. I don't think anyone here does. And I've just been at a party for like hours.
Right.
And so I'm like, I got to leave.
Yeah.
But she sees me like right away, waves me over to her group. And I was like, oh no. So I think I just didn't say a word. I was like, I know I don't belong here.
Keep it together.
Keep it
together.
Jake, you can do this. So I stay at the concert. There was no like moment of they did an altar call and I walked up. That's not what happened.
Do you remember who the band was? I'm thinking Jars of Clay. I don't know.
No, way smaller. Okay. Like local Wisconsin Christian band.
Got it.
I think their name was Breathing Machine. Yeah, that seems right.
There you go.
So the thing that I really remember from that night was not much about the concert, was that afterwards they went to a Perkins.
Oh,
and there was like a table of like 16 or 18 of us. And I had sobered up by that point.
Yeah.
But they take time to pray for the food, and it's a table of like 16 again, and one person just in the center prays for everybody's food. And I am just looking around the restaurant like mortified. Yeah. Like we grew up praying before meals, but it was quick and to yourself. If you were in public, you didn't do it. And I'm just like, does anyone else see how weird this is?
Yeah.
But as weird as it kind of felt, I realized there was something different about their faith and this spirituality that I had.
Yeah.
And that led me on this like long journey. So I go back home, I paint houses that summer. There's a Christian guy in the crew who would answer some of my questions about Jesus. And I get back to campus that fall. I was at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, and Julie is the first person I see when I get back to campus. She's setting up like an outreach that they're doing to incoming freshmen, and I just start helping. I'm like setting it up. I'm not even a Christian yet. I'm setting up this outreach. I start going to the campus ministry and start to realize there are just things I completely missed. Like really basic things like why Jesus died. That I just did not get. And it wasn't until October. I'm at a retreat that we have, and the speaker does this thing where he has like a sheet of paper that you can sign your life over to Jesus. And I'm a pretty like analytical guy. I know there's nothing about that piece of paper that is binding. This isn't like some contract someone's going to pull out later. But I knew that, like I really sensed from the Lord that this was the kind of commitment that I had never made. I'd never trusted Jesus with my life, with my sin. And there was like this older guy who was kind of like, he was involved in the ministry, but he's one of the cool guys. And he was like sitting next to me. And I remember him looking at me and he's like, I know this is a big decision, but you can do this. And took some time to process with the Lord and said yes to following Jesus. Now, did I know? How much theology did I know at that point? It was very minimal.
Right.
But it started this trajectory on my life and ended up on a 10-week mission trip that summer where I'm like sharing the gospel message with people throughout the whole summer. And God just like, he grew my heart for reaching out to people, but really grew my heart for the word. Somebody there taught me how to study the Bible for the first time. And I just remember soaking it up and loving it. And that was kind of my college career. I led in the campus ministry. I went on mission trips to the Middle East, to Thailand, and just fell in love with ministry. And that's actually what led me to look at whether it was pastoral work or full-time ministry after college. And that was really, that moment is one of the first moments when I was deciding that. It was one of the first times I sensed where God was really directly speaking to me about what he would have for me. And as I was thinking about kind of my story, I'm not a person who thinks like that, like God audibly speaking to me, but there are a lot of moments where I can look back and be like, oh, this is where God like impressed upon me like this or that thing. And it was the first time was really, one of the first times was thinking through what to do after college. I had seminary applications in my room, And I'm also processing, do I go to work for the campus ministry?
Yeah.
And one of my big hangups with the campus ministry was you had to raise financial support.
Yep.
I was like, no,
Yep.
not doing it.
Yep. That's one reason why I decided to become a pastor instead of pursue campus ministry. That scared the living daylights out of me.
It scared me so much. I had no idea who would say yes to supporting me. I'm like, why would you do that? And I remember the Lord like really clearly asking me the question, what would you do if you didn't have to raise support? And I instantly respond, I would join staff with the campus ministry.
Right.
And I think my heart kind of drops. So like, if that's my answer, I have to be able to trust the Lord with this.
Yeah.
And I was on staff with that campus ministry till right now.
Right.
19 years of him providing, of him doing that.
That's
I think
amazing.
I'm so grateful for a conversation like that with the Lord early on, because it set up this belief that he does speak to me, that he will help guide me. It's not always going to be crystal clear, but that was, a really pivotal season of my life.
Yeah. That's a great story. I think I've heard like little snippets of that along the way and just knowing you. So it's fun to hear that more in depth. And if I got it right, did you meet Hillary at college as well?
Yes.
Right? Wasn't she a student there as well?
Yeah. So I became a Christian as a sophomore. Hillary became a Christian as a freshman. So we were kind of like in the new to the ministry group. And I actually referred to her as my little sister for a while. And
you
then
married your little sister?
And then I started to like her, and I quit using that name for her because that would be creepy.
Yeah, totally.
And so we met in college. We're a part of the same ministry. Got married right before she graduated from college.
Okay. And then obviously discerned together that, hey, we're going to pursue this vocation as a married couple, right?
Yeah. Well, at first it was just 1 to 2 years. We did their internship program, and we kind of thought that would be, we'd do that and then figure out what was next. But about 1 year into that internship, we did a mission trip together, and we started, like on the way out to the trip, we said, well, if we ever join staff, and by the time we were driving home, we just said when. Somewhere over the course of just being engaged in the ministry, being able to see people do that for their life, we're like, we could do this. And we love this. We'd love to be a part. And it was a place where both her and I could do ministry together. And really valued that 18 to 22-year-old thing because of what God had done in our lives while we were college students.
A lot happens in those years to form the trajectory of the rest of your life, specifically, obviously, with faith development. Yeah. So fast forward then, you guys get married, you join staff. Here you are 19 years later, about to transition off staff and become a pastor. Tell us some of just kind of significant markers in your faith journey along the way over the last 20 years that God has used to continue to lead you, guide you, and shape who you're becoming.
Yeah, I think that's hard to pick a few. I don't think this podcast is long enough to talk about all of them, but as I think through some of the most pivotal moments, I think through 2013. So 2013 was the year our son was born. So Elijah's our oldest. And I remember this moment where Hillary and I are having an intense discussion, some would call it an argument or a fight, about when we're going to do birthing class. And I was kind of like, well, we can't do it this night because I have an event for ministry. And she just shared her heart. She said, I'm worried that you're going to prioritize work over our family. And that was just this punch to the gut of thinking I had no idea she saw that would be an issue. And so I do what any person does in that moment. I fight back and tell her why she's wrong and defend myself, but it stuck with me. And the Lord really did use that, really used her speaking to me to bring me to this moment of, what are you trying to teach me in this, Lord? And it did bring about a season of repentance, of realizing that how subtly ministry had become this idol in my life. When I was younger, it was wrestling, and that one was easier to pick out. It was harder to pick it out with ministry because you get validation. You see fruit, God doing work. And I was like, I'm doing great. I'm a young leader. We're in this place where we're leading this team together. And it took that comment for me to really go back to the Lord and think, where is she right here? And she was. And I'm so grateful for that because it set me on this trajectory of, engaging in looking at my boundaries of work and am I emotionally healthy? Am I spiritually healthy in my job? Am I on a path to burnout?
Yeah.
Because anybody who's been around ministry long enough can point to the people who burnt out over time. And so that comment happens. I'm in this season of beautiful growth, I think, like really 2 months becoming a dad, which is opening me up to emotions that like Midwestern small town guy didn't even know existed.
Right.
And it was wonderful. And then March of that year, one of our staff members passed away unexpectedly, which does not happen often on staff. Our staff are young.
Right.
And it was crushing to the students in our ministry and to me as a young leader trying to figure out how do I navigate people through grief when I've never really had to grieve much at all. I didn't have a lot of capacity. I remember a pastor friend of mine like reach out to me and he was like, well, you know what to do here, right? You've walked people through grief before. I'm like, no, I have no clue what to do here at all. I do campus stuff, like 18 to 22 and then they leave. But it was probably one of the most impactful times for me to recognize how God meets us in our brokenness, in our grief. There was the Christian band, well, I think they're still around, 10th Avenue North, and they had this song called Worn, and it was like on repeat for me all the time, because there's just this line that's like, I'm tired, I'm worn, my heart is heavy. And that's just what I felt for a month. But the Lord was just constantly reminding me that that's okay. Like, be honest about that. You don't have to act like everything's okay. You don't have to put this smile on. Tell me that you're tired. Tell me you're worn. I'm big enough to handle this. And other people want to help too. So it was this season of this self-sufficient, I got this under control person just being knocked down and being able to see that the Lord was actually the one who held me up. And he wanted his body to like help hold me up too. I remember we did a memorial like service, not like funeral service, but just a memorial thing at the campus for this staff guy. And I remember our local church at the time, they provided the worship for that night. And I couldn't do any. I mean, like I barely could talk. And so they get up and they sing for a long time to let our students just process through worship. And I was just weeping because I was like, this is what the body of Christ can look like. This is how the Lord brings other people to help you when you actually don't feel like you have to do it all by yourself. And so those were just huge markers for me of what, at the same time, a son being born, having to walk through this. As much as the second one, I never have to want to walk through stuff like that. Both of those, I think, made me such a more healthy individual and helped me see how God is working in very different avenues in my life. When you think of like who you are becoming in that season and who you are now and kind of where life has taken you, because where were you in that season specifically? We were in Minnesota.
And so knowing your story of like moving here, what are some of the things that you've seen over time in terms of how who you were, then to who you are now even change over the last decade or so? The biggest, is I've become a lot more healthy. It's hard to say that shrink it down, but ministry had become so much of my life that I needed something to break me of that to an extent where it could be in a healthy spot. And I feel like I am when it comes to ministry, like I love what I do. I've loved my 19 years doing campus ministry. I'm really excited for the next season doing church ministry, but I feel like I'm in a place where it just doesn't define who I am. It is what God has called me to vocationally, and I love that. But it's not who I am. And I think one of the ways that showed up is really in that season, I started this season, like kind of this practice of every 2 years just asking God, is this where you have me vocationally? I don't think I could have done that before then because I've been like, well, what if he tells me something different? Will I be of value to people anymore? And it was just so healthy. And so I had this rhythm built up in my life that I don't think I could have before. So every 2 years I would just come before the Lord and just ask like, hey, is this where you have us? And most of the time it was under 24 hours and the Lord would be like, yep, keep going forward. But I think that openness that I didn't have maybe to the Lord's leading and guiding
I don't know how that would have looked if I wouldn't have had that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've just observed in knowing you over the last handful of years is the way you talk about your relationship with the Lord and the way that you spend time with the Lord. And I think part of that is probably the ministry you've been a part of, shaping that value in you of like a personal relationship with the Lord. But I know that it's significant, and you talk about the Lord in a way that you really do have a person, like he's a real person that you know and you commune with and you spend time with. So tell us what that has been like as you have moved through the last decade of ministry, and kind of how you've seen the Lord move in ways that you're like, okay, I'm learning how to follow his leading, because you've done that, even like you're in the midst of that, like making this transition. But how have you gotten to that point where you can say, oh, okay, I think this is what the Lord is leading me to, and this is the type of relationship I have with him that leads me to follow in that way?
Yeah, so I think one of the things was there was a shift for me pretty early on, or around that time in my like personal walk with the Lord, where I grew up probably similar to you in what we would call like the quiet time culture.
Oh yeah.
You spend your 30 minutes or whatever with Jesus in the morning, and then you're good for the rest of the day. Because you do it in the morning because that sets you up for the rest of the day. Right. I actually have no issue with that. I still get up at about 5:15 in the morning, go find my spot on the couch and spend time with the Lord there. But there was just this nagging, there's got to be more than that.
Yep.
Like, God isn't like something I give 30 minutes to. Like, what if he like actually wants to work throughout the day? And who is the Holy Spirit dwelling in me to like help me do that throughout the day? And I think that was one of the big things. And that's what's probably helped me have more trust that even that he is speaking, that he is moving, that he is constantly at work, because it's not limited to this short time in the morning and then Sunday during the week, but it's like consistent. Like if he really is the God of everything, like he can communicate with me at any time. And so I think of times where it was probably about 4 years after that incident with the one guy on our staff team, I was processing another change. This job had opened up that would move us to the West Coast in ministry. And I did a pro-con list. Like every time it comes out about even.
Yeah.
Right? Like we could move there. This would be great. This would be really hard. And I had no idea how to discern what was right in this idea, this thing. And so I go on a run and I'm listening to a talk, and again, of a topic that I'm trying to grow in, which was how to hear the voice of God. And it was on listening prayer. It was a sermon. And so I'm on the run listening to this sermon on listening prayer thinking, have I done this with this big decision? And I really sense the Lord saying, no, like just take some time. And so I took my headphones out. I'm on this beautiful nature trail and just went, God, what do you have to say to me? I'm just going to be quiet for a little bit. And I sensed him say, stay. I was like, that's enough. Like, that's all. I can do another pro-con list, but I'm just going to go with that. I emailed the guy who I'd been in contact with about the job and just said, I'm taking my name out. And he affirmed, he's like, I actually think from talking to you, that's the right step for you. And we end up having like our most fruitful year of campus ministry that I might ever remember. We were seeing people come to Christ. We were seeing I think we had like 200 people come to a meeting, which for us was like typically like 80. We're like, what is God doing? And it was just super fun. And just felt like, oh man, again, another example of how the Lord, sometimes it's in big stuff like that, but learning that I could trust him and ask him about things that are big and small, and he really did answer. And yes, you have to take a step of faith because I'm not like burning bush with Moses getting the clear like that, but there was this sense built up.
I was going to ask, so you have this sense of stay, and I'm wondering if you can, I know it was a while ago, but maybe you could describe a little more like what you actually sense. Because I think a lot of people are curious. Like if you were to ask folks who are Christians, and specifically at Meadowbrook, like, do you want to hear from the Lord? They're like, yeah. Like, absolutely, I want to hear from the Lord. But I think it feels overwhelming. It feels scary. It feels like somehow disconnected from their everyday life. But I would say, I feel like I'm regularly hearing from the Lord in big and little decisions, and sometimes it's hard to explain to people like how you experience that and how you discern that. So I don't know. I'd be curious to see if you have any description of what you sensed in that moment and how you said, "Oh, this is the Lord."
Yeah. So I do think that's hard, because I think we would love it to always be audible, and then we we heard it.
Yeah.
We know it, or it was written down on a sheet of paper for us. This is what we do. I think for me, most of the time when that has happened, it's been preceded by prayer. It's been preceded by seeking the Lord in it. So it's not like, oh, I have not thought about this at all. God, speak to me on it.
Yeah.
Often I'm even have brought it up with other people. And I think the Lord speaks in multiple different ways to us. And I think that's maybe where we get limited too. We think it's got to be like this audible voice. There have been times where I've been reading the Bible, and as I read, I'm just like, oh, yeah, this is what you're trying to tell me. That's true. Yeah. There have been times where in moments of prayer where I am just praying about something, and it just feels like the Lord is like, gives me clarity. Yeah. Like, this is the direction. There's been, because sometimes we say we want it to be like, oh, it's because I'm at peace with that decision. Yeah. I would say a lot of the times when the Lord has spoken to me, it's not given me peace right away. Yeah. It's made me think, oh no. Yeah. Like, because it's like stuff I need to repent of or steps of faith I need to take, and I just don't have instant peace. Yep. I would say what happened in that one was I just had hit this point where I was like, God, I can't figure this decision out for me. So I'm going to lean into you. And there was this sense that was very clear, like of stay. And I mean, impression, whatever you want to say, but I think it was, I had sought the Lord enough that in this, like when I go to him with it, like there was just this clarity of this is what you would have for me. And I think there have been multiple moments like that even preceded us moving to Milwaukee. Yeah.
Yeah. Share another one of those moments that you experienced that.
Yeah, so I said we had this great year of ministry. I come back to campus the next year. We have another large group meeting, great attendance. And then, again, I can't explain exactly how it happens, but I really sense the Lord saying, your time here is winding down. That was not peaceful for me. Right. I was like, why would we leave? Everything is going great. But I think it was, again, because my hands were open to what my future would be. The Lord had an avenue to speak. I think one of the reasons we don't hear God speak to us a lot is because our fists are so tightly gripped around our will and what we want, it's hard to hear him.
Yeah, trying to control our reality.
Yeah, and it's hard to hear God, because then God's just, what you're hearing from God is just what you wanted in the beginning, which isn't probably him. Right. And so I have that time. And so I'm thinking, well, what do you got for me, Lord? Like, if we're not here, what are you going to do? And that's August, nothing in September, nothing in October. Yeah. Nothing in November. I look at other jobs. I get offered like other jobs, and it was pretty clear none of them were right. And Hillary and I got to a point where we had to be like, we just need a break from this. This constant trying to evaluate is hard. We go to this staff gathering that they had, and one of our bosses asked us if we could meet. And it was in that meeting they asked us if we would pray about moving to Milwaukee. And we were floored. It was not on our radar. Yeah. And within 24 hours, I'm like, that's what we're going to do. Yeah. Now, Hillary took, I think, 72. Yeah. But in the end, I think the Lord had just been doing so much, even over that season of not getting the answer, that when it came to us, like we were just prepared that, okay, how could this explain what we've been walking through? Right. How could this opportunity explain saying no to these other things, or not thinking this was right, but still feeling some unrest about where we're at? And so when the offer came to us, I think we were just ready. And like I said, we said yes, quick. I think our bosses were shocked with how quickly we said, yes, we're going to leave where we've been for 8 years. We're very established. We love our church. But it had just become this point where,
So like the teacher in me is listening to what you're saying. Like, okay, if I were to try and like somehow like outline what you just described, it would be this idea of like, if you really want to hear from the Lord, you first have to seek the Lord. Yeah. And you have to seek the Lord not just from a standpoint of trying to get something from him, but genuine relationship with him. Yeah. The second thing is you have to be open. Like you have to like not always be trying to control and manipulate your situation, but just to say, hey, I really like, I don't know what the Lord has for me, so I'm going to be open to this. And then kind of along with that would be just surrender. Like, okay, regardless of what he says, I am going to accept that and not try and fight that or counteract that or negotiate with the Lord. Yeah. And so I think if you're doing those three things, you're starting to posture yourself in a way to actually hear and be open to God.
Yeah, and I think then if that's the posture, those things there's nothing like huge about them. And that can be in
Right.
big decisions and small decisions.
Right.
Like it can be in a decision of, are we supposed to move? But it could also be in a smaller decision. I remember one time having it, we were about to get cable, like TV put in our house, and felt like the Lord, like, I'm like, I actually haven't really sought the Lord on this.
Yeah.
And the Lord was just like, no. And he directed us to what we should do with that extra money, which was we started this practice of taking our kids out on dates instead of getting cable. So we take each kid each month. And I would never have thought about that.
Yeah.
And it was the best use of our money.
Yeah.
So it's like that was a smaller decision. But it's that same principle. If you're open, if you are actually seeking him,
Yep.
if you are, and I would say like obviously in his word, like where you are like knowing the right filters of what could be God's voice and what wouldn't be God's voice. And having wise counsel around you. I think that's probably the other piece. Like having these people that you can go to and be like, what do you think of this? Especially when it's a bigger thing.
Yeah.
I think it's always helpful to bring in someone you trust. And
Totally.
I mean, I think if we fast forward to where I am now, because I went through another season of that.
Right.
More recently.
Yeah.
I was having people in my life who I talked to.
Yeah.
Did that.
So we use the language a lot around here about Kairos moments. I would say everything you've described today has been examples of Kairos moments, whether it's, do I spend this money on cable or not? Whether it's, hey, do I stay here or apply for somewhere else? Whether it's the death of a staff member and a coworker, like all of those things are moments where God is present and at work. Sometimes he causes those things, but not always. Like I wouldn't say he causes the death of a coworker, but he's present with us in those moments and trying to guide us and lead us, comfort us, care for us, and bring us into whatever he has next for us. And so as you think about where you've been over the last couple of years, about to make this transition, in the process of making this transition, describe that. I mean, I think it's kind of an interesting story for people to hear of how God, I think, led you to be in a position where you're going to join staff in a week.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a long story with so many different Kairos moments. I think of how the Lord has moved and worked. I remember, conversations with people of like, oh, I'm more open to pastoral ministry than I've been. I'd had pastoral jobs brought up to me in 19 years of ministry, and I was like, no. One time I said no so fast I felt guilty, and I was like, I should go pray about this, and I came back, and the answer was still no, but that was just, had been my bent. So the Lord needed to just even have some of these moments to open me up to what would it look like for you to do ministry in a different context, and help me see things that I was passionate about.
Right. So we go back to those three things, right? Seeking the Lord, being open and surrender. Like, again, there's an example of like, okay, I need to be open to this, like be open to the what if, the possibility, rather than just being like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so I get to last April, we're talking a year ago, and I shared, I had this practice of every 2 years, I just go before the Lord, trying to be as open as I can. What do you have for me? And it's often been very quick. And I knew within 24 hours, this was going to be longer.
Yeah.
The Lord just made it seem like I want you to sit in this. I want you to really think through it. And that was in April. I go on a mission trip, have a great time in the Middle East doing ministry. But I remember talking to one of the guys on the trip, one of the staff guys, and I told him, I said, I feel like 10 years ago, Jake would not have been okay leaving staff because it is so much of who I am.
Yeah.
But now I feel like I love this, but I could leave. And that was a different posture. I feel like the Lord had even like worked in me so much to get to this place where I could stay and be content and love it, or I could go somewhere else. And so that was really big for me. But what I did immediately when I got back was I contacted 3 guys who were people in my life who had said, I think the Lord is putting me in this season of discernment that I think is going to be longer. Like I'm not thinking this is going to happen in June.
Right.
So a buddy of mine who's a guy who's been on staff with the same ministry as us, a local pastor who I know, not at this church, at another one, and then my spiritual director. And so I bring those 3 in, and obviously Hillary and I are having conversations this whole time. And I just ask if I can share things with them as I'm processing, as I'm sensing stuff, as I'm hearing the Lord, to see where I would be wrong and affirm where I would be like hearing him correctly, and pray for me. And that ended up with this sweet season. So throughout the summer, I remember thinking like, okay, I'm just going to be in this for a bit.
Yeah.
One of the moments that I really remember God, I think, opening me up the most was I preached one Sunday. I think it was in July. And I remember coming home and telling Hillary, I'm like, I think I could do this.
Yeah.
Like I could see myself not preaching all the time, but like working in a church, like talking to people afterwards, being like, and I was starting to sense that the Lord had shifted in me this vision that I had had of like, for the 19 years of ministry had been 18 to 23-year-olds. They're my focus. And then I would spend my volunteer time with people 4 to 84 working in the local church, because we've always been really connected to the local church. And I felt like the Lord was shifting that like focus to being my priority might become that 4 to 84, whatever ages you're thinking, and college will always stay. There will still be this part of me that's always gravitating to that. But what if that was becoming my volunteer and one was becoming my main focus? And so that was happening, but still nothing. Like there still wasn't this like, oh, I should apply for all these other jobs, because I think the Lord was also revealing some other stuff to me in that time as I'm discerning, was that like, we're in Milwaukee. If people know us, we love Milwaukee. It has become our home. I would jokingly tell people sometimes it's almost like we were the Israelites with the promised land. Like where we are rooted here. This is where we belong.
It is the good land.
It is the good land. And it is right. So they're right with that name. Except February. I don't know how much I always love February. But we kind of started to like piece together these things that we knew were going to be true of my discernment, like what would be next. So I'm talking about it's months to get to these 3 things. And these are the 3 things we found out. Like we felt the Lord was really clear on. We're staying in Milwaukee, for one. I'm staying in full-time ministry. So I had looked at other jobs. You know, I've done a lot of different things on staff that I could maybe do. And I was just like, but what I really want to do is help people grow closer to Jesus full time. That's what I want to do. So we're staying in Milwaukee. I'm staying in full-time ministry, and we're staying at Meadowbrook. Because our kids are loving it here. I mean, they treat the church like it's their house. We have to have conversations with them about it, that it's not their house. Please stop doing that sometimes. 12 and 10-year-old, they do a lot of crazy stuff. But they have just friends, and like, they're like setting up play dates for themselves after school or after church. So I'm like, why would I take them out of that?
So those 3 things, it sounds like you're saying those are things that you felt like the Lord led you to, rather than you are imposing these on this decision.
I felt like we were really clear on those, because I was really open to like going into different jobs. I was like, why not? I've got the next season of my life.
I remember some of those conversations with you that spring, that summer, into the fall, and just like saying, oh yeah, I wonder what God is going to do with that decision. And also really glad to hear at that time that he wasn't calling you away from Meadowbrook, because I was like, I hate to lose Jake. But
well, I remember one of our conversations. I asked you like, hey, if I thought I should go into pastoral ministry, if that's even something, this is pretty early on in that process. I asked you, what steps should I take? And you're like, well, what I might do is write a resume and just start to apply and see. And I was like, but I don't want to go anywhere else. Like I don't. And there was this like, I don't want to, but there was also this like clear reason why we shouldn't. Because my kids are thriving in their walk with the Lord right now. They're taking good steps. They've got a place they call home. Like, I don't want to pull them out of that just to try something somewhere else.
And that's interesting, because that goes back to like Hillary's fear back in 2013. Like, are you going to prioritize work over the family? And here you're still saying no. Like, you know, the Lord has brought you, like, we're going to prioritize family.
That was a big switch. I don't know if Jake 2013 would have said that same thing. It would have been like, oh, there's an option. Let's go for it. Let's try. He had just changed a lot of my heart. And we had great community. And we've had some church stuff that's been harder. And so to find a place.
Not here. Make sure you tell people it's not here. It has not been here.
But we'd found a home here. And it took us a while. You remember our process of taking months to decide if we were going to land, because we just never wanted to leave a church.
It would have been January of 21.
January 21 we came because of a rant. Like, we just knew we needed to try somewhere else because of some stuff that had happened. And we just showed up here because we had been here for a campus ministry. We had crew had an event here, and we're like, well, I guess we'll just go there.
And
I remember like seeing you, and you're like, hi.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yep, we're here. But then telling you, like, we're not here for sure.
Right.
And
but you kept coming back.
we kept coming back.
But it was probably like a 5-month process.
It was 9.
9. Okay.
9.
Yeah. Maybe I mean, I would have thought by May or June, because if you came in January, I was thinking like by May or June, maybe you had said, okay, we made a decision, but maybe it wasn't until
it was
the fall.
September.
Okay. Yeah.
Because we had a buddy who was starting a church, and we were like, we're going to go check that out.
Yep.
So, but by the time we were at September, we were all in.
Yeah.
So it was like, we're like not just like normal people, like, hey, I guess we'll start going here. It's like, how can we lead? What can we do?
Yeah.
And we just found a home. Like we loved it. It was where we were. So again, why would we leave that?
Right.
Where we are growing? Like, I feel like my marriage is as strong as it's ever been. I feel like my kids are growing. Like, why would we uproot that just because I want to try something else? That felt like the selfish route.
Yeah.
And so I get to November, and I communicate with my spiritual director. I'm like, hey, Pete, these are the 3 things.
Yeah.
And I communicate it to Hillary, and what I think means I'm staying on staff with the campus ministry crew because there's no job at Meadowbrook.
Right.
And really, I'd become kind of picky in a good way. I think the Lord had directed me, like, what I really wanted to do was like small groups and discipleship. Like that's where I felt like I wanted to speak some, but I didn't want to do it 30 to 40 times a year.
Who would want to do that?
Yeah, crazy people want to do that. I don't have as many stories as some people. So I just felt like I had felt so clearly like from the Lord that this is what it is, that there was this like sense of peace that we're going to be, I'm going to be on staff for the next year and a half for sure.
Right.
And then I am sitting here at Meadowbrook because this is where we office as a staff team.
On Mondays, on
a Monday morning. So I had communicated all that to people on Thursday and Friday. Monday morning, I get an email from you to the elders saying that our discipleship pastor was stepping down.
Yep.
And just floored me. I took my laptop, I turned it towards Hillary because she's sitting next to me. She looks at me, but we can't talk because our staff is right around us. And she just texts me. She's like, how are you doing right now? And I'm like, I'm not going to be very good for a few hours. Like my mind is nowhere ready. The way the Lord works, the way his hand is in it, you and I had lunch that day.
Right. Already on the schedule for like a week and a half or whatever.
Yeah, for a while. And I just remember being like, well, I don't want this to be about me. I want to ask Brian how it's going. So I kind of let you share, how are you doing with this? Because it was a surprise.
Yeah. And, it was a big loss. I mean, we loved Nate. He was a great fit and did great things. So it was like a big loss.
Didn't see it coming and nobody wanted it. It wasn't like, I guess we're engaged. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt, even though I'm like, maybe I'm interested. And so then I just remember telling you at the end, like, hey, I think this is something I might be interested in.
Yep.
I got to talk to some people though. So what I immediately did, again, am I hearing from the Lord? I go back to Hillary right away because she's been in this with me the whole time and is going to be affected by it. Then I go to all 3 of those guys.
Yeah.
I don't even move forward with Meadowbrook till I can get to the 3rd guy. And it took like a week to be able to finally get lunch with him. And we were able to. And all 3 of them were like, I think you have to. It would make no sense not to. And one went as far as to say, I think it would be sin if you didn't at least apply.
Be disobedient.
I was like, whoa, you've never said that before about anything. That's not his personality. So that led us to say, like, you know what, we're going to apply, but we're also going to be really open-handed in this because I may not be the right fit for the church. And I want to know if the church and what the job is actually what I think it's going to be. Because on paper, it sounded great. And so I remember I went into the first interview that we had thinking like, all right, I'm pretty open-handed right now. And there was a question asked, because one of the main things for me was, it's a director of discipleship or discipleship pastor. I love discipleship, but with my training, with my vision, like I can't divorce evangelism and discipleship. Yeah. And I was like, I got to know if I'm going to be able to lead out in that area. And the question was asked, I think by you, like we view evangelism and discipleship as 2 sides of the same coin. How would you feel about like helping us lead out in both of those? And that was the point that I'm like, we're good.
Yeah.
It was that question. The Lord, I think, had kept me open to like, you need to hear this. Like, don't like just go all in until you know and they know. And I think that was the point where like, all right, we're going forward. As long as they want me, I'm pretty confident I want this. And
that's cool.
It was then, a fast process,
Yeah.
and then really slow.
Yeah.
Because you hired me in January or something.
Like the end of January, beginning of February. And you're like, I'm not going to start until May. I was like, really? Okay.
And then that was like, I did and do still love what I do.
Yeah.
And I want to finish as well as possible.
Totally.
And so that was very gracious to have that.
Yeah. So, when I got hired, it would have been like beginning of March. I didn't start until June. I mean, granted, I was moving from Atlanta. I think the church was hoping I'd be here next month. And I was like, no, I'm going to finish out the school year and finish well where I'm at, because I think that's really, really important. So we've been very supportive of that while we're really eager for you to be on board. So
I'm eager as well.
Yeah. This has been a great conversation. We're kind of pushing a 45 minutes, so I'm going to kind of wind us down. But I think the thing that I really appreciate about you, not just what you have shared today, but just who you are in general, and why I think I know why I'm really excited for you to join staff here, is this sensitivity and ability to discern what the Lord is doing and respond to that. Because I think discipleship at its core is just two things. It's, if you go back to the Kairos tool that we talk about, that you can find on the Storytellers page of our website, it asks two basic questions. And I think these two questions are the fundamental questions of discipleship. What is God doing in my life? And how should I respond? Like, if we are always asking those two questions, what is God up to? What is he saying? Where is he leading me? And how should I respond? Like, you can't not follow Jesus if you are living into those two questions. So I think one of the things that, we can say to the church, what we will see more of in classes and leadership from you is that, like, trying to share with people, show people, teach people how to hear from God and respond. And I think it will be a game changer. So for those of you who are eager for that, who are listening to this conversation, like, I want more of that. The good news is Jake's not going anywhere, and we have more for you in that. So any parting words as we wind this conversation down?
No, I think I would just echo what you said. I remember the time when Storytellers was first cast vision to the elders at one of our meetings. I was like, I love this. And at that point, I wasn't thinking as staff. I was thinking as an elder, like, how do we lead forward in being a church who, like, hears from God and responds? Not because I think one of my biggest things is like I said, I'm a Bible guy. I love taking in information, but if it's not leading to, like, fruit and life change, like, it's just like reading a book. And that's good, but it's not what God ultimately wants. He wants this abundant life abiding in him. And how do we as a church do that so that it overflows into the community, so that it overflows into our workplaces? Because people who are living like that with Jesus, they want to talk about him more.
Totally.
They want to tell people how they're growing. They want to tell people even when it's awkward, even when it's a coworker who doesn't really know Jesus, that you're going to have those conversations with them. And that, I think, is what gets me really excited, because when people are growing and seeing God at work, when they're learning new things about him and putting them into practice, then it goes up well beyond the doors of a church.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for doing this today, and look forward for more from Jake in the future on this. And if there's anything he said today that really resonated with you or impacted you, make sure to tell him when you see him around the church or anytime you see him in the community. So thanks for joining us today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.